Can you quickly give it a try?
Yeah, I will do it now. Just a little.
Manan, you remember what is implicit parameter?
Yeah, the implicit parameter, suppose if it is like if we want to use it in the particular function, then we can use. Otherwise, implicitly, if we are not declaring it, it will take the default value.
Default
You
value
ask
from
the,
where?
sorry,
Default value from where?
from the default value.
Jatin, you remember what's the difference between implicit function taking implicit parameters and default parameter?
Yeah, so implicit applies to multiple functions, and default applies to a single function. Even if we don't pass a value, that default value will be used. If we pass a value, the value which is being passed will be used.
No, yeah, like preparation is not good, yeah. Like
With implicit, it like defining a parameter becomes optional.
that's optional for both, right? See, any person will start asking Scala, no, with 3-4 questions, they will reject you.
Not able to revise that.
Yeah, you have to. There is no excuse. And if you really want to move to big data as soon as possible, then you have to prepare it. Yeah, like it's not very tough. Also, like it's a matter of like a couple of hours you have to spend every day.
Uh, Siddharth, that same function, different parameter, that thing I tried, so it worked for me. So it got disconnected in meanwhile. So
Yeah, it should work. So you tried calling that function by giving the name also, name of the parameters.
yeah, so what I did means I created two functions, main with the same name, one with string data type, input and output, another is integer input and output. Then I call in the main, I'll call by the name.
No,
So
that
it,
was not the assignment. Yeah, again. I was saying like a function takes two parameters, a string comma int, another function takes int comma string. Then you call that function. Okay, call that function by explicitly specifying the parameter name. Then you see what's happening. So what did you do? You define a function ABC, AB, and AB. So function entity, and then we are calling for Gurk 4. Right?
Yeah.
Now that is one thing. Another thing is basically sorry.
So that
Mm.
this comma need to remove.
Can you run it?
Yeah.
Function string, always function string is getting called. Oh, sorry, my bad actually. I did the wrong thing. Function string, function integer. When you are calling, it's fair enough, right? So you are calling 10 comma hello. So it is calling string function. Other time it is calling integer. So it's perfectly fine. Even though you have two functions with reverse sequence of the same parameters, if you are calling them through the names, so the same function is being called. The correct function is being called. Here you call a equal to 10 and b equal to hello. So it's checking for the function which takes integer comma hello. Isn't it? This is perfectly fine. Okay. So function overloading is also working, and we also verified you can call the function by passing the parameter names also. So that is also working fine. Okay, so this is another very important thing. Okay, so let's go to the next concept. We just discussed about the class, right? So Amol, you remember like what is class and object and all these things we have discussed?
Yeah, like classes in as like Java only we were defining the Scala, but in for object like we can
You
have
will
like
not explain like that. Like when something is and something is being asked, it's not means like how to compare it with other languages. The interview will say, I don't know Java, like what you mean as Java class. So
okay.
everybody remember what is class, object, and all this?
So like there are well-defined types. Like integer is also kind of a class. Combination of objects we can declare it in a class. Combination of attributes we can assign it and declare it as a class.
So class is just a data type only, just like integer, string. These are predefined classes as predefined types. Similarly, basis our requirement, we can create some user-defined classes also. Okay, we want to or user-defined data types also. So these are same. These are basically user-defined types or a blueprint of our real-time object, and it contains like both attributes and functions. Okay, attributes are the real-time attributes like account having attributes like account holder's name, date of birth, account opening date, balance, and all this. So these will become the attributes of that particular class, and functions are the behaviors. The account, what he can do, account can get the details, account details, can deposit, can withdraw, and these are the operations the account can do. So these can be different functions inside that particular class, right? Then how to instantiate a particular class? Through the new keyword. Okay, object, sorry, var x equal to new that class name. Okay, that is basically we saw like how to instantiate a particular class. Class is a blueprint of a real-time object, or it's a user-defined data type. Okay, whichever you can say. Then coming to the next concept called constructors. Okay, constructors are the way to basically enforce some constraints on instantiation. Okay, integer without any value shouldn't exist, right? or or basically a transaction object without any transaction ID, transaction amount, transaction timestamp. This shouldn't exist. A transaction with employee without employee ID shouldn't exist, right? uh, Basically customer without customer ID shouldn't exist, right? It's an invalid record. So you have an employee record without having employee ID. So it's we call it as an orphan record. Okay, it shouldn't exist. Okay, your database table shouldn't allow you to insert this kind of junk values into the tables. The tables when you define it should be having certain constraints, okay, certain restrictions to avoid to avoid junk records to that table. Similarly, in object-oriented programming also, when you are working in a project like that, you should also make sure you are not creating whole bunch of orphan objects, which may end up creating a lot of trouble or making your entire database in an inconsistent state. Assume like you have implemented a banking application, and from that banking application, and you have not maintained any restriction on the account creation. So what happened? So what will happen? Suppose you instantiate a particular account object without having any account ID and account holder's name or joining date and all this. So what will happen? Suppose some function has been written which takes withdraw function. So that account object can go through that and you can keep on withdrawing the amount. Okay, so that can also be possible, and it can be, suppose some hackers are basically tracking your code base and your system. They found some issue like that, so they can basically exploit this kind of situations. That's why like in programming also there should be some way to apply some restrictions on the object instantiation part. Okay, just like last session you created an object of student like var xyz equal to new student, then you access the functions and the attributes through dot operator. The same thing, like we just call that student, we just mention new student and empty parenthesis. So what does that mean? That means we are calling the default constructor of that particular class, okay, which takes no parameter. Okay, but we can parameterize the class also. Okay, we can parameterize the classes, like functions are parameterized. Similarly, classes can also be parameterized. Okay, so that means like when you instantiate that, you have to pass those information. Okay, when you call that function, you have to pass those information. That's the whole idea here. So now, unless these are very basics, okay, we're not going very depth. We are just discussing the basics of Scala. At least this much is expected. And otherwise, if you show like in your resume a Spark with Scala developer, a person start asking few basic questions, then it's a gone case kind of. Okay, you can't say I don't know this, I don't know that. Then it basically anybody will be having a question: are you really using Scala or not? Okay, so at least these basic things required to be we should be knowing. Okay, here in line number 28, we have created a class called employee having two attributes: ID, comma, name. Okay, so ID. So you can see class earlier we declared just class student, and inside that we have declared a couple of parameters. So here the class definition itself is parameterized: ID comma int, ID colon int, name colon string. Okay, so this is basically the point here. So we are trying to define a class that is having two mandatory attributes: ID and name. Then inside that we have defined the function called show employee details, which is pretty much similar to your student class. Only student class was having two attributes: student ID and name. So but that has been declared inside that. So that's why you were able to create a yeah, I think I have also given you another assignment on that spiral printing of that two-dimensional array. Right? Anybody got a chance to work on that? I personally have seen that question in 2 interviews. Okay, so that's why only I just asked you to write it. 1 second. Okay, so that is a common question now. It's a logical question people ask. I think we lost the screen, right? So let's go through the next. Can someone else share? Amol, can you share your screen? Yeah, can you open IntelliJ?
Yeah, I
So
opened.
can you go to the same example what we were like discussing? Oops, package.
No, I don't have that example.
That Scala project also you didn't import.
No.
Then how we are going through the programs and all?
I was doing through internet.
Isn't it? So you are saying you have a RDD on top of which when you are calling group by key or reduce by key, it's failing. Which is pretty straightforward, right? That means the RDD what you have created, it's not a pair RDD.
Okay. Yeah.
Siddharth, what exactly is the compact buffer?
Compact buffer is just a collection only. It's just separate type of collection defined here in Spark project. You have any workspace created?
IntelliJ, it's there.
Can I share screen till then? I have it with me.
Yeah, I mean it will take a lot of time here. Amol man, what is happening here? You are not up to date here. What you are doing? Yeah, Saurabh, can you reshare your screen?
Yeah.
It will take a while to import it here. Are you not finding time to practice it, or like you feel like you can able to cover all that without importing the project
No,
also?
I was doing, but like I do like some own pace.
No, own page that's fine, but at least the whatever we are discussing that should be the cover, no? You like you can do a number of extra things to further like get more details, but at least what we are discussing that so like that the basics part that you have to complete it first, no?
Yeah.
I'm not saying only just practice these programs. If you have time, you can practice it. You're sharing your screen. Okay, how many other people are there who have not yet imported the project?
Yes, that I have also not done it.
You didn't import the project, right? The thing.
Yeah, on Saturday, Sunday also I am working in office, so office work is too much. So I'm getting tired after that.
Your voice is breaking, yeah. Your voice is breaking. Okay, so let's discuss about the constructor concept. So we are saying like you can also parameterize the class definition. Okay, so that's the
Siddharth,
okay. So we were like discussing about the constructors. So we just declared one class called employee, and employee has been declared here in line number 28 with two parameters, ID and name. Okay, and both are having two parameters. Sorry, both are basically declared in the same line. Okay, if you compare it with the previous class, what we have discussed, the class demo, the same thing we did. We declared a class, but this ID and name were not parameterized. These are two class members. So these are exactly one and same only, but only difference is, so that student class also was having two attributes. Here the employee class is also having two attributes, ID and name. Okay, so there it has been declared inside the class, so it becomes optional when you instantiate an object. But when you declare it in the same line of the class declaration, then it becomes mandatory. So when you declare this to ID and name, so what happens when you are creating objects? So here you can see line number 8, we have created an object employee Siddharth is equal to new employee, and you have to pass this parameter. If you just keep that, it's a compilation error. So it started giving you error. Okay, unspecified value parameter ID and name. Okay, so this is how you can enforce some restrictions. Means if you just put this kind of restriction, that if you put this kind of restriction that whenever I will be creating an object by employee, I have to pass these two parameters, otherwise employee object cannot be instantiated. That means throughout your application, when your application is in production, so there is no way somebody can basically orphan employee object is moving to and fro across multiple functions. Okay, to avoid that, we create this way. We basically declare classes with appropriate constructors. Okay, so that is there. So then the next thing is basically then you call println employee. So what it will print some hash representation of the object. Okay, just like if you remember earlier in RDD we saw when you had RDD of array of strings. So when you are printing it, when you are saving it as a text file, when you read it back, it was reading whole bunch of hash representation of each record, isn't it? So here same thing holds true when you are creating or when you are defining a class with whenever you're creating a user-defined class and you're trying to create objects and print, so it will always print a hash representation of the object. You can see the first line. Okay, so you call println employee Siddharth, so it's printing com tsm oops employee @ some hash value. Okay, so that means this message is not readable. If you're trying to, just like you print an integer, it will show the actual integer value. You print a string like println some string value, it will print the actual string value. But here, even though the employee is having ID 101 and name Siddharth, but still it's printing some hash representation, which is not making much sense. Like a person can't understand like what this is. I can know, yeah, this is an object of employee class, but what the content, I can't figure it out, right? So the same after that, what you did, so you called show employee details. So employee details is a function to show the details of the employee. So we have defined the function here, line number 29, that is show employee details. So it is printing the employee details. Println with string interpolation employee within parenthesis ID comma name. Okay, you remember like last session we discussed like this is called string interpolation. You can parameterize a string also. Okay, some static string and some placeholder. Okay, that placeholder will be replaced by those variables. Okay, so that is there. So then the next thing is so we have created again another employee object. We have created employee Sachin 102 Sachin, and you have called like employee Sachin.show details. Okay, so then we have created another class called big data employee, which is having two parameters, ID and salary. But here one additional thing we have done, we have used var and val keyword. Okay, so var and val keyword also we can specify while declaring a constructor. It's not just constructor, in functions also this holds true. Okay, what's the difference? Like by default, when you declare this line number 28 employee with ID comma name, both ID and name are by default val, val, that means constant. So whatever values you have passed to that function, you can't change it. Okay, which is a standard practice we follow also. That's why here in Scala, it is by default, it is val. Whenever you are defining some parameters to a constructor or a function, these are by default val, val. Okay, so post that, but you are free to basically change it also. You can use var, val, whatever you want. Okay, additional thing is basically when you are declaring the constructor parameters as without any specifying any var and val keyword, this becomes private to that particular class. What I mean here is basically when you created employee Siddharth, you try to access this ID attributes outside the class, because this is one class and constructor demo is another class. These are two different entities, right? So you're trying to access the ID attribute of the employee class object, that EMP Siddharth. So you'll not be able to call it because this becomes private. Okay, that attributes become private to that particular class. You won't be able to access it outside the class. Okay, but when you are using var and val keyword explicitly, it no more becomes private. Okay, you can still access it outside that particular class. There is no restriction. Got my point? This is one of the important concepts. Like when you are declaring a constructor or function, all these parameters you are defining there, that they are by default val. Okay, that means you can't modify it. Once you pass some values inside that function or inside that constructor, you won't be able to change that content, change the content of that particular object. It will throw you error. At the same time, when you are using that var and val keyword, so it becomes non-private. But yeah, basis the var and val keyword, you can modify or not modify that particular attribute. If you declare one parameter with val keyword, then you won't be able to modify it. But if you are declared with the var keyword, you will be able to modify them. Okay, that's the thing. So, but here, like we have created employee, big data employee object. Okay, then with ID 101 and salary 30 lakhs. Then basically line number 17, you are accessing the ID attribute. So you are able to access the ID attribute. So because you didn't leave it blank, rather you have used the var and val keyword. So in this case, like these attributes becomes non-private. You can access it outside the class. Okay, that's pretty much what you did here. Okay, you created a big data employee object and you try to access it outside. It's accessible. Okay, so the ID attribute we have declared with val, that means it's constant, which is logical. So student ID, employee ID, it should all be constant. So we did the same thing. So if you try to access it, if you try to modify it, you can access it just like we did here. ID has been accessed. ID has been accessed. But the moment you try to override it, it will throw you error because that's a val. Okay, so same time the next line what we did, we changed the salary. Okay, big data employee 101 dot salary go to 35 lakhs. It's allowed pretty much here. You can basically assign some value here. Okay, then println big data employee 101. You just try to print it. So same thing happens. So it will print some hash representation. No, it will not print some hash representation because what we did. So what we did in big data employee, we have defined a function called toString. Okay, every time you override the toString function, so this toString function comes by default from the parent most class, that is called object. Okay, capital O object class is a parent class of every other class we are defining. So it is having this toString function. The default behavior is it will be printing some hash representation. But if you override it, but you are free to override it. Okay, since whatever class you are defining by default, it is inheriting the object class. So this toString function also becomes available to you, and you can modify it. Sorry, you can basically override it. Okay, that's pretty much what we did here. We tried to override this. Okay, we tried to override this, like override def toString function. It returns a string, and inside that we are returning a string. Right. So this is how you can override a particular class also.
That can you repeat this override thing again?
Override means one second. So a concept, there is a in object-oriented programming, there is a concept called inheritance. Okay, you can create a hierarchy of classes. Okay, you can create a hierarchy of classes. So when you are doing that, when you are creating a hierarchy of classes, then you are free to basically override the existing features of the parent class in the subsequent child classes. Okay, same thing, like object class is also a class which has this what you call function called toString that is used to print the current state of object. Okay, so by default you saw it is having the it has been defined in such a way that it will print the hash representation of the object. But what we want to do here, we don't want to print the default hash value. Rather, we want to print some readable message.
So how to achieve that? You can override the toString function. Okay, that's why like it's just a same function definition. You are just defining that function, but with along with the function definition, what you are doing, you are basically adding the override keyword. Okay, override keyword, if you're adding, that means it's assumed that this function is available in the parent class and you're trying to change it. Okay, just like that. Okay, so that is we just override this class called override this function called toString. So now you don't have to define any separate function. Okay, you don't have to define any separate functions to you don't have to define any separate function to print the content of that particular object. One second. Okay, so you don't have to override this. So you don't have to separately mention any function to print the content of object. Rather, we always follow the toString function. Okay, we override the toString function and return the relevant information you want to return from that, and then that particular value will be used. That particular value will be used to when you are calling println function. We are calling println function, passing an object to that. So in the backend, it will call the toString function. Okay, so that is what we have done here. Then what we have done. So it's not you are not restricted to specify only one constructor. So you are free to override multiple constructors. Okay, basis your requirement. So you can define multiple constructor in your class. So what is the essence of that? Let's try to understand. Like when you are creating a class called account, say bank account. So account can be having different types, right? Account can be a savings account, it can be a student's account, it can be a current account, it can be of different type. Okay, in that case, how to define all these constructors? That means there should be different set of restrictions. That means if you're passing account balance, minimum balance, and date of birth, and is what you call like person above 18 years. So if you're above 18 years or not, so a couple of information, if you pass that, then it will be creating a normal savings account. So if you are a student, you are less than if you're a student account, you are not working, you are a student, so then you can, so the account savings account what you will be creating, that will be a student's account, like free account kind of, isn't it? So then basically that's a free account, right? So post that so that's a free free account. So suppose if you are defining another set of restrictions, like there is a minimum that there is a basically overdraft limit. Okay, so date of birth, customer's name, then overdraft limit, that means you are trying to instantiate a current object. So similar, so this kind of restrictions you can think in multiple ways. Okay, so in that case, like how you will be adding those kind of restrictions with one constructor, it's not possible. One constructor will add only one particular set of restrictions. To basically achieve that kind of like flexibility, we have the concept of like multiple constructor also. So in this particular example, big data employee, so what we did, we have two constructor, one constructor which is defined in the same class in line only, and another is defined in line number 37 with this keyword. Okay, it's exactly same as your function, but only without having return type. Okay, you just mentioned def this, and you have defined 3 parameters. So that means you can create an object by passing 2 parameters, ID and salary, and you can also instantiate big data employee by passing 3 parameters, ID, name, and salary also. Okay, so in this case, what you are doing, so you are calling the default constructor like this ID and salary. That means you are first setting up these 2 parameters, and then you are saying this dot name is equal to name. Okay, this represents the current object, and the right hand side parameters are the function parameters. Okay, so with that, like what you can do here, you have created a big data employee
101. So new big data employee, you passed 101 and 30 lakhs. So then you saw these concepts like you can access the ID attributes because you have defined the attributes with the var or val keyword. So these are non-private. And then what you did, you override the salary value also. Like you have big data employee 101 dot salary equal to 35 lakhs. You just override the value because salary has been declared with the var keyword. Then you call println, it is printing the actual big data employee's value. It's saying big data employee 101 null 35 lakhs. Okay, because why it's printing some readable message, unlike the previous example employee. When you print big data employee, it does printing com dsm oops employee some hash representation, but here it is printing the actual state of the object. Because of the only difference, we have override the toString function. Okay, when you override the toString function, whenever you create an object of the class passing it to println, it will print some readable message. Okay, what you have overridden there in the toString function. Okay, and second example, what you saw, big data employee 102 is equal to new big data employee. You pass 3 parameters. Here you have passed 1 and 2, like 101 and 30 lakhs. Here you have passed 102, name Sachin, and salary is 35 lakhs. And then again you are calling println big data employee 2, so it's printing the value like big data employee 102 Sachin 35 lakhs. Got it? So these are couple of steps. Okay, these are couple of steps on constructor part. Then
Siddharth, can you explain again why you can access the private member and why you can't?
There is no why, it's the syntax only. If you define the constructor parameters with var or val keyword, this becomes non-private. You can directly access it outside the class. If you don't declare var and val keyword, it will by default become private.
Okay.
This is the way it has been designed. That's the syntax. Getting my point? So constructors that can take multiple parameters. If you declare the data type, it becomes sorry, if you declare the var and val keyword, it becomes non-private. From outside the class, you can access the attributes. If you don't declare var and val keyword before this member declarations, so it will become private. Okay, you won't be able to directly access it from outside the class. Okay, these are all about your constructors. Okay, then the next concept comes in, that is called companion class. This is also a common question. Everybody asks Scala questions, means whatever we are discussing, you will see that questions for sure. And there is no escape. So we have to just understand it and practice this. So here what we are trying to do, here what we have done. So let's first try to understand, like now till now we have seen two keywords. One is class and another is object, right? So did you see any difference between class and object? So if you're declaring class, if you're declaring an attribute with class, that means what? That means you can instantiate it. Okay, you can create a number of objects to that. Okay, but when you are declaring a class with the keyword object, it becomes a singleton object. Okay, when you are declaring a class with object keyword, it becomes singleton class. That means you won't be able to instantiate it more than once. This is also a common interview question: what is singleton class and how do you achieve singleton class here in Scala? Getting my point? So singleton class means when you are declaring a structure or a class with the keyword object, so it can't be instantiated more than once. That means a natural questions comes to my mind. If I have a class called employee with the keyword object, so I can call like var x equal to new employee, var y equal to new employee. So what will stop me? Is it like I can call new val x equal to new employee only once throughout the program? It's not like that. Rather, when you are defining a class with a keyword object, you can't instantiate it. That itself is object. That means you have to make sure, like when you are defining a class with the keyword object, so you won't be able to instantiate it using new keywords. So you have to access the attributes through the object name dot attributes. Okay. So if this singleton, so if I have declared a class, say object emp, it's having an attribute called department code by name. It has a function called apply. So I can directly call emp dot department by name, emp dot apply, like that. you can't instantiate it, but you can access the attributes to the name itself. Okay, through the name itself, you can define, you can basically access the attributes. Getting my point? So that is one of the important aspect of. So let's try to understand what is companion class and object. One second. Sorry, Amirat, I couldn't answer your call yesterday. I was
Yeah,
busy.
I will call you in the evening.
You know, at least if you're good at Spark, no. So there are concepts that is companion class and object. So we first started with the object comparison between class and object. So what you'll be doing? So class is basically is meant for, it's a blueprint of a real-time object, and you can instantiate a class n number of times. There is no restriction, and you can put some restrictions on the structure of an object through constructor concept. So that like you are putting a restriction how to create objects of a given class, and then the next concept is called object keyword that is used to define a singleton class. When you don't want to allow the developers or the users to instantiate it, then you can create that object using object keyword. Okay, so so what are the typical examples of a object? Like when do you require that? Okay, so if you just understand it through the examples, then you'll be able to remember it for a longer time. So class, as we discussed, like it's a user defined type, just like you have integer string. You are creating object n number of times. String s equal to var s equal to hello world, var y equal to I am Siddharth, like that. So you're creating n number of objects. So there are certain scenarios you don't want to instantiate it more than once. Okay, creating a particular class more than once will create a problem. Your application may get into an inconsistent state. For example, you are working for a bank called HDFC Bank. Okay, HDFC Bank has multiple branches. Each branch can be having multiple employees. Each branch can be having multiple accounts. But HDFC Bank as a whole is a single entity, isn't it? HDFC Bank as a whole is a single entity. So if you define the class for HDFC Bank, then it is a single object only. There should be a single object available in the entire application. If there are multiple applications, means data duplication will happen. HDFC Bank object is having a list of branches. Each branch is a list of employees, list of accounts. So if you create two such HDFC Bank object, that means everything becomes double counted. If somebody is trying to iterate the number of number of accounts in the entire bank, but you have two accounts, so you will be iterating and you will double counting it. Okay, to avoid that, we have the concept called singleton class, and singleton class means you will be able to instantiate it only once, and in the entire application only one copy of that object exists. Okay, so that is there. So that is with that we achieve through object keyword. And then coming to the companion class and object, there are a couple of pointers. So very common interview question people ask. So that means from the object you got to know like whatever static features are there, that should always go to the object. Okay, HDFC Bank's license number, HDFC Bank's list of employees, list of branches. So these become static. Okay, so it never changes. So whenever you have a static component to design, we always use the object keyword. And people from Java background, you can just compare it. A class can be having class members and static members. Static members are static for the entire. Class. Okay, it's only accessible through the class name, not through the object name. Okay, so for that we have this concept called class concept and object concept. Concept is for the static members. Okay, and companion class and object are basically when you are defining one class and one object with the same name in a given Scala file, then the class is called a companion class and the object is called the companion object of the other. Getting a point? So whenever you have in a single Scala file, you have defined one Scala class and one Scala object, but both are sharing the same name, then it becomes companion class and companion object of each other. Okay, the class becomes the companion class of the object and the object becomes the companion object of the class. Getting my point?
What is the advantage or the use case of doing that?
Good question. So everything what we are learning, we should be having the actual context, like in real time when you can use. So the point here is basically when you are defining. So when you are defining, when basically you are designing a component which is having both static and dynamic features. Okay, when you are defining a component which is having both static and dynamic feature, then you have to use, then you have to go through this concept called companion class and object. Getting a point? When you have both static and dynamic feature to be added. Now we discussed about the only dynamic features, like that means you are creating a user defined types of students, employee. These are basically the dynamic features. You can create n number of objects because in real time there can be many accounts, there can be many students, there can be many employees. But as we discussed, like when you have some static component, so HDFC Bank itself should be existing only once. So those kind of objects are called static objects. So then you have a requirement to design a hybrid structure, which is having both static features as well as dynamic features. Then you can go ahead with this. Companion class and object. All the static features of that you can put it into the object, and all these dynamic features you can put it into the class. Okay, just like class and all this. So for an employee class, so what can be the static features? So for employee, like list of departments, like to which that person is belonging to. Suppose you want to create a map that is having all this department list, department code and department name. So which is common for all employees. Okay, it's not common, it's not specific to a single employee. So the department hierarchy is the same for the entire hierarchy of entire the department hierarchy. Department hierarchy is same for all these objects. So in that case, you can create an object that is having that department information, and the features like employee name, salary, and all this. These are dynamic features, and it is specific to each and every employee. So you can define it inside the class. Okay, so this is what I mean as like static feature and dynamic feature. If you have some static, don't think much, just go through the normal layman term. So don't make it complicated. Don't think like you have to learn oops programming again fast, then only I will be starting with the Scala. By that time, like the objective is not to learn Scala like in depth. So only the basics required for Spark programming, that is what required. So if you are able to finish, or you are able to grasp these concepts what we are discussing, that is sufficient. I never see a person is asking me like we didn't discuss this part, that part. Okay, everything has been covered for a Spark developer. Whatever things required, I covered everything. Okay, so if you are seeing any new question, you can post it in that WhatsApp group, that DSM group, and I will immediately add it to my Scala part from the subsequent batches or from this batch itself. Yeah, that's why basically I keep on adding stuffs. So I always try to address the new stuffs, what is being asked in the new interviews, so that everything is up to date. Now streaming is being asked extensively. So I have added few more examples on streaming. Delta Lake also asked, people are asking a lot. So Delta Lake also I'm adding. So AWS Glue. So whatever things people are asking, so I'm trying to cover at least 80% of the stuffs. Because 20% is always basis your thing. Okay, so because use case will be asked every interviews, they will be giving you some data set, and you will be asked to do the analysis what they're asking for. So those, anyway, I always try to also create the examples around that. So just try to finish this part. This should be sufficient. Okay, so coming to the companion class and object. So as we have discussed, like you are designing a component which is having both static features and dynamic features. Then you can add the static features inside the object, and you can add the dynamic features into the class. Okay, dynamic features means every time you create an object, a new copy of those variables created. Employee ID, name, salary, and all. So every employee is having a different set of all these values. Okay, it's a different snapshot. So those I mean as dynamic features. Okay, but list of departments, R&D stands for research and development, HR stands for human resource. So those are basically fixed for the all these employees. Okay, so that is what is the intent, that is the intent, and we discussed about the definition also. class and object exist in the same Scala file, which are sharing the same name. Then the class is called the companion class of the other, and the object is called the companion object of the other. So we have declared an object called EMP having one attribute called department code by name. Okay, department code by name is having this is a map having string comma string value, key and value. So when you are so HR means human resource, ACT means accounting, like that we have different departments. Okay, and we'll talk about the apply function. Before that, we have defined an employee class having 3 attributes: first name, last name, and stocks. Okay, so stocks has been declared with val keyword. It will keep on changing. Okay, we have different functions. Since we can't access this first name, last name outside of the class, so we have created different functions to access that: get first name, get last name, get stocks, like that. Okay, award stocks is another functions to add few more stocks to that. Then get department name is another function we have declared to check the to basically return the department name. Okay, so then override toString function, it is printing first name, last name, stocks. Okay, so now how did we create the object? Val employee Pratik equal to new employee. You passed Pratik Solanki 100. Okay, you are calling println, so it's printing the state of that object. Then you are checking like employee Pratik dot get employee get department details, or get department name. You're passing R&D, it will print, it will basically paste the corresponding attributes. And one additional thing what you got to know, like you have employee object and you have employee class. The private members of each other are accessible to other. Okay, here you saw like you have accessed the department code by name, which is a private member inside this EMP object. Okay, you just mentioned inside the get department name, you are calling employee dot department code by name dot get, or else you pass that code. If that exists, it will be returning that particular department name, or else it will send you some error message. Okay, so similarly you saw like here first name, last name are basically private members, so you can access that first name, last name outside of this class, like inside the employee object. That means private members of each is accessible to the other. Okay, so here you have called employee Pratik.get department name, so you are able to get the employee name, department name. Okay, similarly award more stocks, you added 20 more stocks. Now we are printing again, so you'll see the stocks is updated and added 20 more stocks. Then what you're doing, you're creating a second object, employee Siddharth is equal to employee, and you passed these 3 parameters, no new keyword. Okay, earlier you saw we have used a new keyword, new EMP, but here there is no new keyword. So when you declared a apply function, so inside a companion object, you are free to define multiple apply functions based on the constructors available to you. Here we have a single constructor only, class EMP, first name, last name, stocks. So we have a single constructor. So what we are doing, like we have defined a function called apply, def apply, first name, last name, stocks is equal to new EMP, first name, last name, stocks. Okay, so in the companion object, you can mention n number of apply functions based on the number of constructors available for that particular class. So if you use apply function, then new keyword becomes optional when you are creating object. But my point, so in companion class and object, there are a couple of features. The private members are accessible to each other. Then you can define apply functions to avoid new keyword. Sorry, Jatin, is my voice audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me.
I was just checking apply function. I just missed that explanation.
Apply function, I'm saying like if you want to avoid the new keyword while instantiating that class, you can define n number of apply functions there. Okay. Here we have one constructor, so we have defined one apply function. So the second time when you created an object, I shown you like how to avoid that. We avoided new keywords, still we created object out of it. Okay.
So, Amol, can you quickly recap what we discussed about the companion class and object?
Yeah, like a companion class, we can access the private members and uh, we can like object class will be there, right? We can create a class and then we are having another like class name
So
with
first, tell me
object.
the definition. First, tell me the definition. What is the definition of companion class and object?
Definition I don't remember. I need to.
Jatin, you remember what's the definition?
Definition for?
The companion class and object.
Yeah, so like if there are some static variables which we want to
No, again, you are talking about the intent.
yeah,
So I'm just talking about what's the definition.
like object and class having the same name.
Exactly. We are defining a Scala file with two components, with one class and one object. Both are sharing a common name.
Yeah.
Then the class is called the companion class and the object is called the companion object. Now, Sakshi, say what is the intent of companion class and object? Amol, what is the intent of companion class and object?
Like it is like singleton class. It will act as, and we need not like so we can.
No, intent mean like what is the purpose of that particular this particular concept in Scala. That is what I meant as intent. So what is the intent we discussed?
The class and object pair to be in single source of file.
That is the definition. Yeah, why you're mix and match. That is the definition we discussed.
Yeah.
What is the intent, or what is the purpose of this concept here? Anybody?
Singleton class, like if we need not to create an object and we can like
No,
see we are
again, these are the features. These are the features of a companion class.
okay.
Don't get confused. Yeah, concentrate. Yeah, like I'm saying it multiple times. By speaking, I have become hungry, but still you're not understanding. You're not remembering it. Yeah. Anybody? What is the intent?
So if we have
private
Sorry? No. Jajulia?
if we have some static values in
Exactly. When you are designing a component which is having some static features and some dynamic features,
yeah,
there we go ahead with this companion class and object concept. We can define the static features inside the object and the dynamic features inside the class, and you can achieve this thing. And what are the features of a companion class and object, Tarini? What are the features of companion class and object? Sakshi? Kausik? Somebody please say, yaar.
features meaning the functions you are saying.
No. What are the properties, additional properties you are getting here, or features you are getting here?
We can access the private member, and we don't have to, if we are using the apply method, then we don't have to create the object again.
Partially correct. Like one of the properties, basically the private members of each other are accessible to each other. Then the basically you can avoid using the new keyword while instantiating the class through the apply functions. And what else? These are the two properties we discussed, right? Okay, just prepare in this way. Trust me, Rupesh was the guy like who just cleared interview like before completing the training. You ask him any concept, he will tell each and every point. He didn't miss anything. So the interview will never get a second chance to ask some cross questions. Yeah, my objective is to train you like that you can crack an interview. Okay, don't take me wrong. I don't want to basically that ratta kind of concept, just buy head the things. But I feel like you should be ready for the interviews.
Because the person is showing 3 years of experience means he must have by-hearted n number of things. You can't just say like, let me wait, then let me Google search it in my phone and I will tell you. That's the thing. Not nobody will expect from a 3-year experience guy. Okay, you must be knowing n number of things through this experience only. Okay, so the next concept we are going into is called case class. Okay. So the case class is basically whenever you are trying to create a class which is immutable. Okay, you are trying to create a class which is immutable. That means once you create an object of that class, you won't be able to modify its contents. That means if you have a student class having ID and name, once you create an object which says Siddharth 101, so then you can't change it. You can't just say student.id equal to 102 or student name is Saurabh. You can't change it. That's what I mean as immutable. Once you create an object, you won't be able to change its content. Then a common question comes to my mind, like what's the difference between then val? Is there any relationship between immutability and var-val keyword? In val also we say we can't change the content. We can't change the value. If you have declared val x equal to 10, you can't just say x equal to 20. Is there any relevance between these two concepts?
Yeah, we can immutable. We cannot change the value of val.
Is that called immutable?
So we need to use val keyword for all the variables and immutable.
No, that means like vals is does that mean you want to say val keyword is used to achieve immutability also?
Yeah, I feel so.
Anybody else having any thought?
Yeah, val is immutable only, right? We
What
cannot,
is the meaning of immutable?
like, it cannot be reassigned.
No, immutability means you can't change the content of a particular object.
So
Yeah.
reassigned is also the same, no? Like we cannot assign another value
No,
to it.
not like that. I can say like val x equal to new employee 101 Siddharth. I can't say like x equal to new employee 102 Sakshi. That is what I meant as val concept, like reassignability. But when I'm talking about immutability, I'm saying like if I'm creating val x equal to new employee Siddharth comma 101, then in the next statement I can't say x dot id equal to 102 or x dot name equal to Sakshi. I can't say that. You're following what I'm saying?
No, I didn't follow.
Immutability and reassignability, these are two different things. Val keyword is only through the reassignability. You can't reassign that variable to some other thing. That means if I'm saying, if I have declared val x equal to new employee 101 comma Siddharth. Okay. In the next statement, I can say x dot id equal to 102 or x dot name equal to Sakshi. That is perfectly fine. No error.
Okay, like we can assign new value.
You can't reassign. See, this is the common confusion comes in. So I'm saying I use the val keyword. I just mentioned val x equal to new employee 101 comma Siddharth. Val keyword says you can't reassign it. You can't say in the next statement x equal to new employee 102 comma Sakshi. This is not allowed. Everybody agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm saying reassignability is not allowed for val keyword. But I can say I have created this variable val x equal to new employee 101 comma Siddharth. In the next statement, I can say x dot id equal to 102 or x dot name equal to Sakshi. I can say.
What? You just said no, like we cannot assign.
I'm not reassigning. I'm not saying x equal to something. I'm saying x dot id equal to 102. X dot name equal to Sakshi. I'm not reassigning x. Whatever the content inside that x, I'm changing it. I'm not reassigning x.
So then what happens to the value that was earlier there?
Yeah, it's changed, but it's pointing to the same object only. The same employee object it is pointing to, but the content of that object becomes different. It's changed. But I'm not reassigning. I'm not saying x again in the next statement. I'm not saying x equal to new employee 102 Sakshi. I'm not saying that. If that is I'm doing, then I can say like, yeah, this is violating val concept, so it should throw me error. But I'm saying I'm changing the inner content of that particular object, which is completely fine, which is allowed.
Okay,
So
got it.
val keyword and immutability, they are two different concepts. In some interviews, people confuse you like asking these kind of questions. Getting my point? So the point here is basically immutability and reassignability. These are two different things. Immutability is basically once you create an object, you can't change it. Once I created val x equal to new employee 101 Siddharth, I can't just say x dot id equal to 102 or x dot name equal to Sakshi. This is violating the immutability concept. Okay. So to achieve this immutability, we have this concept called case keyword. Okay. So when you are defining a class, if you just add the keyword case before it, it becomes an immutable class. Okay. Every time you instantiate it, you won't be able to change the content. Okay. This is what I meant as immutable object. So you can simply use the case keyword before a class and it becomes immutable. It becomes an immutable class.
But just one more question, like inside the class, when we are defining the attributes, if we use the val x, val y,
then you can't modify it. Now we have seen that example in constructors also.
Yeah, so we cannot modify. So it becomes an immutable class only. No? Yeah.
Then you have to mention all these attributes with val keyword.
Right.
Then it becomes immutable. So why you will be doing that? Rather, you can use case keyword. By default, it becomes everything val.
Okay.
Okay.
And by default, suppose we don't specify val or var. By default, it is val only. No? As
by default, val, correct.
So you don't.
But we don't declare always class with all these attributes as parameters of constructor, because constructor is only meant for restriction. You have a class of 20 attributes. You can't create a class. You can't create a constructor with all these. Want to make all this.
Your voice is feeble, Siddharth.
He's not audible.
So yeah.
Siddharth, we can't hear you.
That constructor that takes 20 parameters, you can use a case class also. Case class does the exact same thing.
Okay.
Got my point?
Yeah.
So yeah, so these are very typical stuffs, and a person, if he wants to judge you basis your Scala expertise, if you don't prepare this, so if you're trying new different examples, that's perfectly fine. But these are the rudimentary things. These are the first thing you have to complete. Then you can go through some new examples, okay, if you have extra time. But it's already tested. Many people have cleared interview. I'm just trying to cover all these things, what is being asked in the interviews. And as a developer, as a Spark developer, what we need to do, I just covered everything. So first complete this, and then you have free time. You can learn anything. There are n number of YouTube channels out there, n number of free courses out there. You can go through that. Okay, but these basics, don't miss it. Okay, so then the next concept, the case class concept came in. So you can create a class person with the keyword case. Okay, as you know, like everything is immutable. So you have defined the constructor that is having first name, last name, these two attributes. And similarly, you have created again another class called Big Data Institute, having Big Data Institute, having this name, location, program, and all this. So these are the ways to create immutable classes. So let's see, like first you created a person class. So val me equal to person and Siddharth Ray. Okay, so println me. So when you are defining case class, you are getting a lot of additional features also.
Okay, so when you are defining a case class, you are getting some additional features by default. For example, so when you are creating a class with a keyword called case, so by default Scala internally or implicitly add a corresponding companion object to that. That means what? You don't require this new keyword to instantiate it. That means Scala implicitly added a companion object for you for this employee class, person class. So you don't require this new keyword to instantiate the objects. Okay, and the toString function also it is not required. In the next statement, line number 7, you call println me. It will print the state of that particular object. Okay, it will print the content. That means toString function is also by default been added to that. Couple of additional features added that we will get to know in the set when we will be discussing about the collections and set. So there basically two objects can also be comparable by default. In general, what happens, these objects are not comparable to each other. Even if you create a student class with 101 comma Siddharth, another object val y equal to new employee 101 comma Siddharth, if you compare x equal to y, it will always give you false. Okay, that means objects are always the objects are not comparable unless and until you specify the comparison mechanism. Okay, you have to override hash code and equals functions that we'll see there in the set examples. So for now, what I'm saying, like if you don't add it, it will not automatically make the objects comparable, but which is not true for case class. The moment you add a case class, this hash code equals functions are also coming inbuilt. That means if you create two objects with 101 comma Siddharth, if you compare them, they will be equal always. Okay, comparison concept is also added here by default.
So it will check all the attribute values and find out whether the two objects are same or not.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So here what we did, we created again another object called val DSM equal to Big Data Institute, Data Science Monks, Bangalore, Spark with Scala and AWS. So here I've created a hierarchy. I didn't cover inheritance because it's not required. Okay, so that's why I'm not adding inheritance, but a small example I've given. Abstract class institute having a constructor. Abstract class, when you declare a class with the abstract keyword, you won't be able to instantiate it. As the name suggests, abstract means it's an abstract structure. Okay, a class abstract, what's the intent of abstract class? Whenever you are creating a hierarchy of classes, say in a company, so first is basically an employee, then a clerk, then a IT admin, or basically IT person, then there is a software engineer, then maybe senior software engineer. You are creating a hierarchy of classes, or there can be multiple hierarchy of classes, like for software engineer, then senior software engineer, then lead engineer, then engineering manager, then VP, director, and all this. We're creating a hierarchy. Then basically the supermost class, sometimes what happen, we declare it as abstract because we just created an employee class and some basic functions like every day you go and attend and register the attendance, or basically you do the daily activities. These are common for all these classes, this hierarchy of classes, employee classes. So we keep it as so what we do, we just keep it as abstract class. We don't want to instantiate it because it's not actually a class, but the common features we just put there so that all these subsequent child classes will inherit those features. That's why only I have added that. Okay, so that is called abstract class, when you are declaring a class with some functions with fully implemented body or the definition, and some functions which doesn't have the concrete definition or the function body. Okay, so in that case we call it as abstract class, but here I showed only a function with body, but you can define functions without any function body also. Okay, that means the subsequent of the child classes has to implement or override those functions. Okay, I created a class, abstract class institute, a subclass called data science, big data institute. And then I defined a function here inside the case class demo. Okay, get institute details, and this function you can see I mentioned t less than colon institute, and this take a parameter of institute of type t, then it returns if the parameter what they're passing it matches Big Data Institute with 3 constructor parameters, then it will be returning this string institute name location program, else it will call the institute.getDetails function. So what I meant here, basically in RDD sessions, you saw a whole bunch of T, U, and all these parameters. These are defined in this way. Here you are mentioning T less than colon institute means you can call this get institute details function by passing any object which is of type institute or its child class objects.
Okay, that's what I mean. So here T is of type, like it can carry, or it can be assigned with any object which is of type institutes or its subclass objects. So this is what I've defined. So this is all about your case class. So when you are basically here, you have created a data science this institute, and then you are calling the get institute details by passing DSM object. So it is coming inside that. So the first case is being matched, so it returns this string. So it is printing that string inside in here. Okay, like that. So similarly, the final concept in OOPS is basically implicit class. Okay, and this is again important concept. Different type of questions comes in. First, let's see the syntax. So you have created a class called implicit class string utils, which has a constructor that takes up type string, and inside that you have defined a function called scala word count. So what it will do, it will basically count the number of words for a given string. Okay, that means the attribute is called myString. So myString is a statement or a sentence, and you're counting the number of words. Okay, so you have defined a class called string utils, which is having a function scala word count to count the number of words for a given string. Now what you did here in line number 16, you defined a string like Spark collection mimics Spark collection. Sorry, Spark collection mimics Scala collections dot Scala word count. So it looks like you have created a string object only, but sorry. Looks like what you did, you have created a string class on top of which you are calling Scala word count. Does that mean Scala word count function is available in string class? No, string class doesn't have this Scala word count function. But how come it became available to this? How are you able to call this Scala word count function on top of this string? Okay, so which is a string class, and I don't have. So I just created a string statement on top of which I'm calling Scala word count. Okay, on top of which I'm calling Scala word count, and it's able to call, and it's not giving any compilation error. This is because what I did, I just created a class, implicit class, which takes a constructor of type string. Okay, which takes a constructor of type string. Then whatever functions I will define inside that, by default these will be available to the string class. Okay, just like if you compare the RDD and pair RDD. The moment you convert your RDD to a RDD of key value pairs, whole bunch of aggregate by key, reduce by key functions available to your RDD. How? Because they have implicitly done all these conversions. No magic is happening. Same thing here. So a couple of questions comes in interviews like, I have a library and it is having some function. Okay, but I want to add few more functionality. Okay, and I don't have access to change the source code of that. If you want to add a new functions, means you will go to that class and you'll add a function, right? But that person will say you, I don't have access to the source code. Okay, I don't have access to the source code. I can, but still I want to add some extra functionality. So what are the ways? The answer is basically implicit class. I can add an implicit class which takes a constructor of the same time which you want to add. So which basically properties you want to add, or basically new features you add. You pass that as a constructor parameter and then add whole bunch of functions you want. So those functions will automatically be available there. You're getting my point. Here my question is, I have a string class and I don't have access to the string class source code, but still I want to add some additional functions. How I'll do that? That means I'll be creating an implicit class for string. And how to create an implicit class for string? I'll be defining some XYZ class with implicit keyword, which takes a constructor of type string class. Because I want to enhance the features or the properties of string class. So I created an implicit string class that takes a parameter of type string. Then I added a whole bunch of functions. Now these functions will be available to string class. Getting my point?
Yeah, so it's a little bit difficult. So we'll just revise it once.
I know it is a little bit difficult. Yeah, you have to revise. You told me, so you have to. You told me like you have to revise it. So please do that.
Yeah,
You don't again say in the next session. I didn't have time.
yeah. Next session I will be ready. Yeah.
Because these are super important. I'm just saying you again and again. Like if you don't read it now, you go to 2-3 interviews, you will get rejected. With frustration, you will come to home and again study it.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is no escape. We have to go through that for sure. Okay. There is no other go. I'm repeatedly saying to everybody, if you're really serious about cracking an interview, you have to go through this.
That's from past 2-3 classes, right? It is just bouncing up and down.
Sorry?
From past 2-3 classes, it is just bouncing up and down for me.
But like what effort you are making to get rid of this? That's the important thing. I know like it's a new language, so even though Java developers will be, I've seen in many institutes, many batches, some Java developers will come, they will be super confident, they will not read, they will see it's easy, it's same as Java. They'll go to interview and the basic questions, they will be wondering like what this guy is asking. Okay, not just you non-programmers, like it's for programmers also. Some Java developer, Python developer, they will come, they will feel like I can grasp it immediately. But honestly, it requires practice and need to like go through a video multiple times. Okay, so just go through that. If you still have questions, I can take another sessions to recap all these things. But the point is you should go through that. You shouldn't be saying like empty-minded saying, no, I didn't heard about case class. I didn't heard about companion class. It shouldn't be like that. You first go through that. If you have confusion, just tell me. I can take another sessions to summarize what are the things we discussed. So that we can go to the next concepts. But the point is you should go through that first.
Right.
Okay, if it is bouncing above, but we need to make sure like what effort we put into that. So delta lake is a new concept. I just went through that videos almost 10 times. Still I'm not able to write programs like relevant examples. I can write the syntax, but the relevant examples I'm not able to figure it out. So
It is delta lake or data lake?
Delta lake. Data lake though anyway we are already aware, right? I'm talking
Oh,
about,
this new concept is delta lake.
yeah, it's a delta lake. Yeah, it's a new product from Databricks company.
Oh,
which is very popular. It's very recent. It's only open sourced in the month of April last year. It's pretty super new and it's very important nowadays. It's solved a lot of problems in the conventional data lake.
What is help in Spark?
It's Spark only. It is part of Spark only.
Okay, one of the module like YAML and like that.
Just like we just discussed RDD data frame dataset. Similarly, we'll learn delta lake. That is one separate module from this Spark itself.
Okay. See that yesterday I sent one screenshot. That function call they are restricting only val. No, we cannot pass variables in a function call.
You can, when you're defining a function, you can change the variable, like say you are mentioning say add function def add a colon int comma b colon int. So you can mention var a colon int, var b colon int. That is also allowed.
I was trying. I'll try again once.
Yeah, you can try it. Okay, so we'll again connect tomorrow. Just practice this. Okay, honestly, it
Siddharth, I'll
requires
just take
practice.
1 minute, Siddharth.
Yeah,
I just have a doubt. Probably you have told this repeatedly, but I just have a doubt in my mind.
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So you're saying that we will use Scala only this much, what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
But Spark is just a framework, and we develop the code using Scala, right?
Correct. Spark is a framework or it's a module on top of Scala.
And in the real time, we use this tool to write the programs.
Yeah, IntelliJ we used to write Spark with Scala program, or the same ID can be also used to write Spark with Python program also. And so IntelliJ can be used for both writing Scala code and Python code.
Okay.
Just like you have added that library, no? Suddenly what you can do, you can go to file, sorry, preferences. You can go to plugins. If you have installed Python, then you can, why it's not coming? Python Community Edition, you can install it, so you'll be able to write Python code also. But you need to make sure like you have installed Python on your machine, either Python distribution or Anaconda, anything. So you can use it to write Python program also. Because the ID is same, yeah. Anything else?
That's all.
Same thing, like just like your Python pandas. Pandas is a separate module, or it's a library. So you are using Python code. Means you are basically writing pandas code in using Python. We are writing Scala what is that, Spring code using Java, Hibernate code using Java. So these are different modules or frameworks on top of a given language. Okay, so we'll again connect tomorrow. Okay, just prepare all this, just come up with some new doubts. Okay, spend time. Okay, cool then. Bye bye.